8 months ago, I started making Neon Surge without a plan on how to expand my codebase. Finishing the game was a nightmare. Here's how you avoid my mistake. So when I first started making Neon Surge, I didn't quite think that this would be a full release. I just made something fun and I wanted to learn. I thought, well, I should do a project. I'm going to learn much more in that way instead of just following these tutorials and doing all these small projects. I kind of wanted a little big one, but I didn't think that I was going to release it and make it a production game. And that's where it all fell apart, like from the very beginning. I just made systems that just worked, not something that I could expand upon in the future. So I would just do the easiest thing that I could possibly do to just finish my current task. Like, for example, if I wanted to add a score system to my game, I would just add exactly what my to do list said, like to make the score go up when I shoot this enemy, and I would just do it in the easiest possible way that current me could actually do it. So the result was my code was extremely dependent. I had to use AI a lot. It was unoptimized, and also I just did a lot of quick fixes. And that's because when I started my project, I didn't know the importance of creating good and expandable systems from the start, like having a good foundation. And you could probably relate to this story if you ever made a slightly bigger project before, that you just can't finish it because it gets too complicated. And it shouldn't be like that. Good game code doesn't mean that it just works. You need to organize code so that you can change, fix, and expand and add features easily as your game grows. Now, dependency is your worst enemy. The more systems, scripts, and classes that depend on each other, the harder your game is to change in the future. Instead, you need to separate these systems as much as possible. And that's exactly how spaghetti code is made. That's because it usually comes from not separating concerns. For example, mixing game logic, input, UI, and data in the same class or in the same scripts. You shouldn't have one player controller that controls the inventory, the UI, the input, the actual movement, the shooting, the health, the stamina. You shouldn't have everything in one script. You should separate these systems into their own separate small systems. So if you wanted to change, for example, the stamina, you could go into the player stamina instead of having to use the search feature in Visual Studio and just search for stamina. Just try searching for where in this enormous script that the stamina actually is. And also having a chance to break the entire system because the stamina is for some reason in the same class as the UI. Like, you get my point. So you need to untangle these systems so that each one has a clear job. And if you already are like halfway through a project, I actually I highly suggest that you use the next few days or even weeks to untangle the systems and make a much better foundation for yourself, because that would also skyrocket your development. Like, it doesn't just make it easier to, like, because it makes it easier to change, fix, or add new features. It also will make it quicker to implement new fixes. Like, a big project shouldn't be significantly more harder to add features to than a newly started one. But it is because we have too much dependency. And if you have two scripts that need to talk to each other, then you use clear methods for that. You don't just make everything public and call stuff everywhere. Something that a lot of you people have to realize is that your code will change. And a lot of you people watching, if you're not conscious of this, you're probably developing your code in your game as if the game was static. But a game is never static. It always changes. That's what development is. It's changing the game. And you're not going to just add features into your game, you're also going to want to change a lot of these small things. And these changes shouldn't be any more complicated to make than it is in a smaller project. You just need a good architecture. Now, I have an analogy for you. that might put this into perspective. Like, you can think of your code like Lego bricks. You want to be able to swap out pieces easily. That's the whole point of Lego. You don't want to super glue all the Legos together. Because if the entire Lego building is glued together, then one change will destroy the entire building. And it's the same for your code. And if you are going to remember one thing from this video, it should be this reminder. So when you're writing code, always think to yourself, if I came back in 2 months, would I understand this? That's the only thing you need to remember to ask yourself. Now, don't chase perfection, chase clarity. I'm just going to say it, perfect code does not exist. I'm not saying it does. But readable, changeable code will save your future self from hell. It's not only going to save you tons and tons of hours and tons of energy, it's also going to save your entire project. So you should focus on code that's easy to read and easy to change, especially for the future you. It's better to have good enough code that's easy to change and read than some clever code that you barely even understand yourself, just because you wanted it to look more professional or whatever. If you want to learn more about writing good and efficient code, my paid program also includes a bonus module specifically for intermediate scripting in Unity, because I know how hard that middle stage between a beginner and intermediate can be. And that's why I made the scripting module. So if you're interested, definitely click the link in the description. Now that's everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching.